Fred Vasseur has just dropped a bombshell that no one saw coming. And it has everything to do with Lewis Hamilton's driving style, shaking Ferrari to its core. This isn't about lap times or tire choices. This is about something much deeper: mindset, pressure, and the raw emotional intensity behind the visor. The man who personally brought Hamilton to Maranello has now admitted, loud and clear, that things aren't going as planned, that Hamilton isn't adapting the way they expected, and that he's nothing like Carlos Sainz. And that's causing serious turbulence inside Ferrari. What Vasseur just revealed completely changes the way we see Hamilton's first season in red. That fairy tale beginning? It's starting to look more like a slow-motion crisis. If you think you know the story, think again. I'm Julian, and if you love deep dives into Formula One's most dramatic moments, don't forget to like the video, subscribe, drop a comment below, and, most importantly, stick around until the very end. What you're about to hear might change everything you thought you knew. To really understand why this transition has been so rocky, you need to unpack what Vasseur actually meant when he said Hamilton is not like Carlos Sainz. That wasn't a dig. It was a brutally honest comparison between two completely different Formula One upbringings. Carlos Sainz is what you might call a journeyman chameleon. He's been through Toro Rosso, Renault, McLaren, Ferrari, and now Williams. Every time he walked into a new garage with new engineers, new car philosophies, and new team cultures, he found a way to adapt and mold himself into exactly what the team needed. Adaptation is second nature to him. By the time he arrived at Ferrari, he knew exactly how to handle the political, emotional, and technical landscape. He didn't just drive the car, he understood the system. Hamilton, by contrast, has lived in one of the most stable bubbles in F1 history. From McLaren to Mercedes, for nearly 2 decades, he was in a familiar, English-speaking, Mercedes-powered environment. Same engine family, similar engineering structures, consistent feedback loops. Everything was built around him. Coming into Ferrari is like landing on an alien planet. The culture is different. The language isn't always his own. The simulator is built around Charles Leclerc's style. The car characteristics, rear stability, braking behavior, are far from what he's used to. Even small things like how data is interpreted or how meetings are run force him to recalibrate his instincts. Vasseur admitted it took Hamilton 4 or 5 races just to get a basic grip on the new environment. Not because he lacks ability, but because Ferrari's world is so fundamentally different. And while Sainz walked into Maranello with that mental agility already primed, Hamilton is having to build it in real time, under the spotlight, with every mistake and every frustrated radio message turned into global headlines. And that spotlight? It's burning hotter than ever. Vasseur didn't hold back when describing how Hamilton's emotional reactions have made things tougher. When things go wrong, Hamilton doesn't hide it. He broadcasts it, calling himself useless over the radio, suggesting the team should change drivers. These aren't just throwaway lines. They shape the media narrative. They ramp up pressure inside a team already juggling expectations, development goals, and the weight of Ferrari's history. And Ferrari, famously, is hypersensitive to outside noise. Right now, Hamilton is generating a lot of it. But Vasseur made it clear, this isn't about throwing Hamilton under the bus. In fact, he sees Hamilton's intensity as a reflection of his ambition and his hunger for excellence. The same traits that made him a 7-time world champion also make him volatile when the puzzle pieces don't fit. And right now, the SF25 puzzle is a nightmare. The car is wildly unpredictable, especially in low-speed corners. The brake-by-wire system isn't giving him what he expects. The rear instability destroys his confidence on corner entry. The power delivery curve is unlike what he's used to, forcing him to relearn how to manage traction in critical phases of a race. Add it all up, and you've got a driver constantly fighting the car instead of flowing with it. And when that fight spills into the public, it creates a vicious cycle. The media amplifies the drama. The engineers feel the pressure. Development paths get questioned, and small technical gaps, maybe a tenth here, a tenth there, balloon into existential crises. Vasseur even said that a tiny miscommunication on brake feel could cost half a tenth. And half a tenth? That can be the difference between Q2 and Q3. Take Hungary, for example. Hamilton was just 1/10 up on Leclerc. 1/10. And yet, Charles started on pole, while Lewis was stuck in P12. That single tenth cost him his entire weekend. That's what Vasseur means when he says it looks silly. The performance gap is razor thin, but the perception gap is enormous. And perception, especially at Ferrari, is everything. Sometimes, Hamilton's emotional reactions, valid as they may be, end up distracting the team. When a driver of his stature raises an issue, the whole factory jumps to respond. Resources are redirected, energy is pulled away, and Ferrari ends up chasing shadows instead of fixing core problems. And yet, here's the twist. Vasseur hasn't lost faith. He still believes this partnership will work. Once Hamilton's emotional edges are smoothed out, once the team balances his intensity with clear-headed execution. Because if they get that formula right, and if Hamilton finds his rhythm with the car and the culture, Ferrari won't just have a superstar driver. They might finally ignite their championship hopes again. So what's next? After all the noise, frustration, self-doubt, and brutal honesty from Fred Vasseur, where do Hamilton and Ferrari go from here? According to the Ferrari boss, the answer is deceptively simple: stay calm. But let's be honest, for a driver like Hamilton, a man who built his career on relentless energy, instinct, intensity, and emotion, staying calm isn't exactly in his DNA. And maybe that's the real challenge. Not adapting to the car, or the simulator, or the tire behavior, or the feedback loops, but adapting to Ferrari's rhythm. A rhythm that is loud, passionate, imperfect, and often chaotic. Because as much as the outside world sees Ferrari as a romantic dream, a scarlet temple of speed and legacy, the reality inside Maranello is far more complicated. It's a place where pressure never lets up, where expectations never dim, and where every gesture, every mistake, every whisper in the press becomes a story. And if Hamilton wants to thrive here, not just survive, he needs to recalibrate. Not his talent, that's never been in question, but his way of working, his communication, his leadership. That doesn't mean becoming someone else entirely. It doesn't mean burying his emotions or becoming robotic. It means channeling them, leading not just with fire, but with focus. Because if Vasseur is right, and Hamilton is finally starting to understand the car, the systems, the people, then we may be on the verge of something. Maybe not a title challenge this year. Maybe not even a win, but the beginning of a transformation. Since Canada, Hamilton's trajectory has quietly improved. The race pace is there, the consistency is better, adaptation is happening, slowly but surely. And while the headlines still scream about mistakes, the reality behind the scenes is that the gap to Leclerc is shrinking. The chemistry is building. The engineers are finally starting to understand what Hamilton needs to perform. That's not nothing. In fact, that's everything.